Well, good morning, good afternoon, and or good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome or welcome back, as the case might be. My name is Dalibor Petrovic. I'm a partner at Deloitte, and over the last number of years, I've had the pleasure to host this series of live webcast conversations with Canadian technology leaders shaping the future of Canada. I'm thrilled to be welcoming a very special guest today. We have a great conversation about tech leadership. Um, as you know, this is a live conversation, so please do feel free to join the conversation by submitting your questions using the Q&A function of the Zoom platform, and we will do our best to address as many questions as we can throughout this conversation. That said, I think we can just jump straight in. Today, I am thrilled to welcome Janine Leahey to our channel. Janine is the Chief Technology and Information Officer with OLG in Ontario. And today we're going to hear Janine's story, what she is working on, the strategic moves she's making, challenges she's facing, but we will also take some time to discuss the topic of tech leadership. How has the role progressed? What is the role now? Where is the role going? What are the key attributes that Janine feels are important for successful technology executives for today and, of course, for tomorrow? Now, as you all know, I do not introduce my guests beyond their name and role because, of course, I want to hear their stories. So, Janine, first and foremost, thank you so much for your time. Much appreciated. And my first question actually is, if you will be kind enough to tell us a little bit about you and your story, how you navigated your career and your life to now be at the information and technology helm at OLG.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me and allowing me to tell my story and creating a venue. I do think, these kind of sessions are very important. And when I think back to my career and my life, and I think, wow, like what would this have done for me early days?
Yeah.
Just to see, real people in action. So let me start by saying, on that personal note, my career and personal life are very intertwined. So I love starting with, my life and my career because decisions have been made about my career that were based on my personal life. And this is the case for a lot of people, but particularly women. So I had what now, looking backwards, I would call a privilege of being a very young mom. So I started my family between high school and university. So through university, while I was carrying a full workload at school, as well as working between 30 and 40 hours a week, I was also a full-time mom.
Oh my God.
So I'll tell you, I started my career journey, the sort of real job world post-university, coming out of university, really just craving stability and security for myself and my son. I was a single parent. So with that, I landed myself as a receptionist of all things. And let me tell you, there's a lot of leadership lessons in being a receptionist or being that sort of face and, seeing all levels of the organization come in and out. But I'll tell you, I started what I think at a very entry-level job. And really what I learned very quickly is just to say yes to things. So just to say yes, while I got what I was looking for personally, being, more of a 9-to-5 type job, Monday to Friday, being able to be home on the weekends with my son, being able to, have a normal workload balance.
Yeah.
I found it like I wanted more. I knew I could do more. So I learned very quickly just to say yes to things that other people maybe didn't want to do. And what I learned in hindsight, but didn't know at the time, what I was doing was demonstrating that I had capabilities beyond the job that I was doing. I was like, well, I just want to learn and I want to do things. So I will say, that demonstrating ability is key. So just say yes. At the same time, one of the execs took note of that and took a bit of an interest in me. So, she was a great mentor for me early in my career and really, encouraged me when I would say, well, why me? She would say, well, why not you, Janine? And I found that very, very helpful. So, I worked through the ranks, carried a different variety of roles from underwriter to team leader of their customer support function. And I wound up landing into IT. So IT wasn't, through university, IT wasn't necessarily that's what I'm going to do. But I landed there. And so when I landed in IT at that company, it was an insurance company. I'll say, again, doing a multitude of functions. So working through production support, launching both internal and external facing apps. I learned a lot about what it takes to get tech to market in a corporate setting. So that was an amazing opportunity. And I worked with some amazing people, that lot of great teamwork. And at the same time, through that teamwork, I met my husband at work. So we decided that perhaps it was better for us not to work together. So a career pivot that came at a time of a personal pivot, when becoming a two-income family allowed me to take a little more risk in my career. So I left after spending almost 10 years with the insurance company. I left and worked for a startup. So I will tell you, from a career perspective, professional development, you can learn a lot at a startup. I learned very quickly, you wear all the hats, a job description, nobody really knows what that is. It was quite grueling personally. You travel most weeks because we were selling into customers in the States. I held a sales role. Work-life balance was a bit in question. So as much as I was really fulfilled on the career side, I felt like my career and personal life was out of balance. And for those of you that are parents or have been parents of kids in their teen years, when your kids are teenagers, you get to interact with them on their schedule, not on your schedule. So I really felt the need that I needed a little more work-life balance, needed to be off the road, not traveling so much. So went back to the client side at Allstate Canada Group. And there I was leading an implementation team. So leveraging the experience I had at the startup with, large scale implementations. I went and, was working across a variety of things, re-platforming our core insurance systems, doing a variety of data initiatives, trying to figure out, a customer-centric approach. We were doing a lot of really good work. And again, you don't shy away from the hard stuff is what I learned. Don't shy away from taking on the tricky projects, because the tricky projects are the ones that sort of put you in the place of being an opportunity to explore other things.
To grow. Yeah.
So in a few years, I was then promoted to CIO for the Canadian business. So that was my first C-level role. I don't know that I knew what I was signing up for at the time. My boss at the time, the previous CIO, was, heading back to the US. He had been moved up from the US to lead the Allstate Canadian technology team. He was moving back, and I really made the decision that, I was going to put my hat in the ring because, we were doing such great work. We had such great teamwork, and, well, if somebody was going to figure out what the next thing was, why not me? So put my hat in the ring and was able to secure the role. I'll tell you, I had an amazing team, an amazing set of peers that were very supportive of me in that learning. I will say the first year was very, very tough. We had, a couple deaths in the team. So, my first town hall, I'm standing in tears telling people about this. It was extremely, extremely tough. But I will tell you that the support I felt from the organization, my peers, my team was exceptional. So I think that taught me, like, just meeting people as people first is key. So we're all in it together. This idea of work and life not blending together just doesn't make sense to me. So I will say that, it was a huge learn. Then, through a variety of different things, you throw in a pandemic in the middle of that. It was certainly a challenging time, but really, really happy to say, the team did some amazing works, as many organizations did in that time.
I mean, we all remember when pandemic hit, it was technology and tech leaders that saved the day. Like we kept the society going, right?
We did. And I would say if we didn't already know that our CHROs are key partners for us, we certainly learned that in the pandemic.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
people in tech are like this.
Yeah.
So that partnership really, really just helped us excel and really navigate a variety of challenges. And let's be honest, 2020 was a scary year, right?
Oh,
2020 was a scary year.
yeah.
Trying to figure out how we were going to make it happen, worrying about our families and our own health. It was a scary year. So definitely a huge leadership development opportunity. Um, but when we fast forward to 2023, when I left Allstate, I remember something one of my mentors said to me as an executive. She said, "You need to know your best before date." Like, when is
Hmm.
it the right time? We need,
Hmm.
and when I think about tech leadership, every leader, tech or otherwise, has things they focus on. So if they stay in the same role too
Yeah.
long, the organization will get really good at what they focus on, but we all have our blind spots. We all have our things that maybe we could be better at. So that's where the organization would struggle. So thinking about, myself, I thought, okay, I think I've contributed in a meaningful way here. I think that we've done some really good work. But I need to guard the organization against status quo. And me staying in place could encourage status quo. On top of it, I had a successor in place, really felt like I was either in his way and needed to guide him to go, or I had to go. So I chose that it was time for me to move on. And, joining OLG, so for those of you that don't know, Ontario Lottery and Gaming, was a significant career move. So first of all, it was my first C-level transition,
Hmm.
which is a whole development opportunity in and of itself. It was my first experience in the public sector. So
Yeah.
we are a government agency. So we do have a flavor of both, the entrepreneurial private sector, but as well as the public sector.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then a vertical change. I knew nothing about lottery and gaming, nothing. I grew up in financial services, so I
Mhm.
certainly
Yeah.
understood large platforms. I certainly understood how to create infrastructure for an organization. But the ability to, be fluent in the business results and the P&L, I'm still learning a year and a half later.
Yeah.
So, but this is what I wanted. And, the CEO and I joke even today about, well, I was looking for a development and learning opportunity, and he certainly delivered.
And sure, you got one.
Yeah, so that's the long way of kind of saying that's how I landed here, just a variety of different things. And I will say, it's been a ride for sure. It's been a ride for sure, but each time I've moved from one organization to the next, I always worry about, but I work with such great people. I work with such great people. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And I'll tell you, like, there's great people everywhere is what I've learned. So I don't know if I've just been super, super lucky or super privileged, and maybe a bit of both, to say,
But this is also the mindset to have, I think. It sounds like you have the right mindset, and that I think is absolutely part of this success formula,
I think
right?
so. I think so. And I think it's, uh, leading with trust and seeing everybody's intentions versus sometimes, not to say I haven't never had a disagreement with a peer. I'd be lying if I said that, but I've had, and even today I have the privilege of working with some great, great people that are all just trying to do great work. I believe as human beings, we all just want to do great work. So if we can keep that top of mind, to your point about mindset, I think,
Yeah.
makes the days a lot easier.
Absolutely, absolutely. What a wonderful story. So thank you very much for sharing it. So I was sort of thinking and listening to what you were saying to try to sort of extract what seems to be the combination that you were telling us about. And it sounds to me there is quite a bit of courage there to
Mm,
actually to go beyond and outside of the comfort zone, right? That requires confidence. So there's courage, there's confidence, but then there also is curiosity. So I think it's almost like
mm,
a courage, confidence, curiosity is the are the ingredients, You mentioned how you started by saying yes to everything, and I was like, initially, my mind was going like, is this going to be about don't overload yourself? But no, 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 no. Yes, in terms of let me take opportunities that present themselves, and that's
Yeah.
courage, confidence, curiosity
Yeah. Yeah.
at play.
Yeah. And I think that's a good way to say it. I talk actually a lot about courage with my team. Like, let's not shy away from the hard stuff. And I think
Yeah,
that's I've developed into my leadership style, and I'm developing it still and still have work to do. But I think that is one of my strengths is, give me the hard stuff. It's actually what I like.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So, the complex stuff, the things that you have to think through. And I think, not being shy about that
yeah,
comes with it requires, I would say, a little bit of vulnerability too, to say, well, I need people to help me. So I'll use current examples at work. My peers are probably really tired of me asking questions all the time because I don't know our business as well as some of my peers do that have been here
yeah,
for a long time. So, but being courageous, to use that word, to just ask the questions. And,
yeah.
it's, I think that curiosity, courage, and confidence, I think about my son will tell me today, always bet on yourself. He's just opened his own business, and he's very much in the bet on yourself. If you're going to bet on anything, bet on yourself.
Wonderful, fantastic. And one more thing that I picked up through your conversation, very much oriented towards people and
Mhm.
appreciating that you actually cannot be successful until and unless people around you are successful and you're making each other successful. So that was wonderful to hear. But two more things I wanted to just sort of linger on a little bit. You mentioned the importance of having a mentor, an executive who actually noticed you, who noticed you while you were on your first job as a receptionist.
Yes.
And I'm going to assume what they were noticing is your energy, attitude, and willingness to go beyond, right? That's what you said. So to me, I think it is super important for everyone to understand the criticality of having mentors and
Yes.
allies, and that the onus is on all of us to actually create that relationship by behaving in a way you described you did,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So that is, I think, very important to have a mentor, coach, ally throughout.
100%. I could not agree more. And I think it's it's a bit, you know, I wouldn't have even used that word at the time for her and, various folks throughout my career. But looking back on it, that's exactly what she was. She was an ally. And I
Oh,
think,
yeah.
recognizing that, and also at this point in my career, I feel like it's a little bit of like pay it forward, pay it
Mhm.
back.
Oh,
How
yeah.
do I, as a
Yeah.
leader? One thing I would say, to early career folks is like spot them.
Mm.
Sometimes, people are taking interest in you and you don't always see it,
Mm.
right? But spotting them
Mm.
is key, and then advocate for yourself.
Yeah.
For those in, more senior positions, one of my mentees right now, we have an agreement. He's earlier career than I, and so he doesn't work at this organization. So I will share with him as a senior leader, here's what I'm struggling with. And how would you early career want your executive to deal with that? So like it's this beautiful two-way
Yeah.
thing.
Reverse mentorship almost.
Exactly, exactly. And I think it's underestimated. It's underestimated.
That
So
that's fantastic.
yeah.
Actually a great tip. That's actually an excellent tip. Thank for that. And one last thing that I want to also sort of linger on is you mentioned you started by saying your career and your life are intertwined.
Yes.
And I think that, so I personally, of course, I work in a similar sort of high intensity tech leadership, tech executive, complex, constantly changing
Yes.
life and work. And I too am struggling with the concept of work-life balance. I've come to the conclusion that such a thing doesn't actually exist for me. There's only one, it's life balance,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And I think that once I came to that realization, this is actually my life, and I cannot detach the type of work that I do because of the nature of that work,
I agree.
right? It's really becomes the question of how do you balance your life
Yeah.
to progress in a healthy, sustained way, right?
And how do you create something for yourself that you don't feel the need to escape? So for example, if you're just living for your next vacation, the challenge isn't more vacations. The challenge is figuring out how to actually enjoy your day in and day out,
When you're
right?
not on vacation, yes,
Right. And I think the
exactly.
majority of our time is spent at work.
Yeah.
So when passion and profession can come together, that's when magic happens for
That's
my.
where magic happens, and that is exactly a thing that, like, when you're thinking from that perspective, then you say, okay, this is actually my life. I love this. I'm going to balance it so that I can be the best every day, right? I love that. So thank you very much. This was wonderful, Janine. Now, you mentioned you recently joined OLG, new organization, new
Yes.
culture. It's a combination of commercial and public sector, and I would love if you could share with the audiences, like, what might be some interesting things that you've observed, seen? Maybe what are the interesting, cool things that you and your team are working on strategically? And also, are there some challenges, and what might those be?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll tell you, OLG is it's special in so many ways. So when I think about like the purpose of the organization, if we think of the macro purpose, and I'm going to steal something that one of my peers said to me, we make money to give it away.
Yeah.
So think about that. Whether it's a lottery winner or giving it back to the province, one could argue it's not give. That's our mandate, is to fund the province. And we fund programs like building rec centers and schools and infrastructure. Like, it's such a, for me, it speaks to a personal value, like creating the communities. And then as I've learned about OLG, that is both interesting from a business and a technical perspective, things like our retail distribution network. So we are in 10,000 distribution points, more than that actually now. 10,000, that's more than ATMs in
Wow.
Ontario. So
Wow.
think about the complexity of managing a 10,000 point distribution network, right? And then on top of it, not only is that interesting and complex technology and a vendor landscape, and so just fascinating to me from a technology perspective, but also this idea of, you know, there's both, large convenience and gas type organizations that we're working with, but also the small mom and pop shops.
Yes.
And we, part of lottery, our lottery side of our business, is helping those mom and pop shops survive. And so there's just give back to the community. When I think about our casino side of the house, anywhere there's a casino, there's municipal payments, so that
Yep.
it's creating the communities in which we live in. So all of this really speaks to my personal purpose, and just making the world a little bit better however I
Yep.
can.
Yep.
Now, from a technology perspective, we have everything you would want to have from a technology perspective. So I talked about the complex network of our 10,000 distribution points.
Yeah.
We have the requirements around uptime and downtime, just a complex DR and BC business continuity plan, like just having to make sure this high resiliency, high availability. It sounds challenging, but I find it super interesting. And then we also have our digital channels, so straight
Mhm.
up customer facing. So
Yeah.
you name it, we have it from a technology perspective. So both the traditional information technology, also the operational technology with all of our distribution points. So it's, from that perspective, it's been an amazing opportunity to learn, and learn in a way that is, supporting the province and our provincial goals here in Ontario.
Yeah.
Now, when I think about our aspirations, you can appreciate we got big dreams and big goals. So maybe Dalibor, back to your point about the courage and the curiosity and the confidence, that's exciting to me. Like the big, hairy, audacious goals are really exciting to me too. So we're in the middle of, reformulating the next leg of our strategy
Okay.
for the next 3 to 5 years, and not to circumvent the process that will undergo, but we need to step up our game on behalf of Ontario, and we definitely plan to do that. So even that, the big, hairy, audacious goals that are coming out of that is exciting to me. So, and then you put all of that in a culture of, a family, people that really care about the future of OLG, people very invested. It's been an exceptional journey.
Yeah.
And I think, maybe a little bit on the opportunity and challenges side, we have to figure out how we unleash that care and unleash ourselves and, really work within the bounds of our private sector rules and processes, but really challenge and push them as far as we can without, breaking anything out at the same time. So the next leg of our journey is going to be really exciting.
Wonderful, wonderful. As you were describing this, I had a mental image of this strategy and this complexity being nested into this culture of people who enjoy and respect each other, and how powerful that is when you have an organization of people who all share same vision, common purpose, and who get to work collaboratively and enjoy each other's company. Isn't that wonderful?
It
Um,
is. It is.
so, Janine, when you think about some of the challenges that you and the team are facing, like you already mentioned one that's obvious, it's highly technically complex, right? Uh, are there any other things that sort of worry you, or that you see as challenges that you need to be addressing, fixing? What might some of those be?
I think one of the things I would say is this kind of traditional narrative or dichotomy around business and IT.
Hmm.
So when you think about that, many organizations will talk about the business and IT as if they're two different things. And I think, what we're doing and what our strategy is and everything we need to overcome, we really need to think differently, that it's not sort of two groups. It is all just business people.
Yeah,
Some have a technology background.
I love it. Yeah,
So it's not, well, technology delivers things. No, we co-create outcomes for OLG.
yeah.
One of my leadership mantras is what's best for OLG, what's best for EIT, Enterprise Information Technology, and then what's best for your team.
Hmm.
That hierarchy of decision making needs to be very, very clear in our head, that if we're just operating as technologists and worrying about the technology versus the outcome the technology drives, I think we need to get there so that we can accelerate our pace. So, creating that fluency with business results, the comfort and confidence among my team to really challenge when they think things aren't driving results. It's a people opportunity as I see it, and a mindset change.
Yeah,
So I do see this narrative or dichotomy of business and IT.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
We
yeah.
need to break that down.
And this
We're
is this is obviously historical, when from those days long gone, when
Yes.
IT was a back office function that
Yes.
makes your software work, and that's it, and networks. Now I think we have. I'm going to say something very obvious. We have broken through the back office, walked through the mid office, and we now sit squarely in the front of the front office, and everything that every business does effectively sits on technology and relies on information. So
Yeah. Yes.
that's the reality we all are facing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now we are actually we're discussing now this OLG moves and strategies you were mentioning. We just had an interesting question pop up that might be sort of topical. When you talk about those top business outcomes that you are helping achieve, what might some of those be for OLG?
So for us, I would say I feel a direct accountability. So we measure our sort of overarching success in net profit to province, right? So our goal right now is about $2.7 billion. That's the Uber outcome I'm trying to get, right? So I don't want to think about, well, yeah, and there's a bunch of service desk tickets and infrastructure things we need to do. Like we just redid and upgraded all our power at our Sault Ste. Marie data center. Of course we need to do that. But that's like saying I need to get up in the morning and brush my teeth. It has to be done. But the outcome I'm after is that $2.7 billion to the province.
There we go.
Now, you can't execute at that level. So the way we're doing it is things like we're in the middle of deploying self-service terminals to different locations across. That's a new channel for us. So what all the things that are, launching any new channel, how are we operationalizing it? How are we making sure it's high resilience? Those are the things we're working through. So there's both, I would say, the Uber macro goals of net profit to province, but then there's these smaller outcomes we're also driving. Launching new games. We're working with the Interprovincial Lottery Corporation on some new things there. So definitely ingrained across a few different functions.
From that perspective, I mean, you obviously operate in a highly competitive environment, not necessarily lottery, but
on the gaming side,
it's the citizens' entertainment wallet, right? And it's a share of that entertainment wallet.
Exactly.
That is the competitive environment in which you operate, right?
Right. And it's a share of discretionary spend.
Yeah.
At a time when the economy is putting the most pressure on people's discretionary spend.
Absolutely.
So we do have a fair amount of challenges in front of us too, just from an economy around us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So this was wonderful. Thank you, Janine. I'm curious to get your perspectives on the actually role that you are in, the tech leadership role, tech executive role. I think we are all experiencing that the role today is actually different from 5 years ago, especially from 10 years ago, probably uncomparable. But I would love to get your thoughts on that, and where do you think the role is going and heading, and what would be the right attributes and skills you feel are essential for a leader, credible, competent, strong information technology leader today and tomorrow?
Yeah, so let me start with where I think like the evolution of the role to today. I do, and you said it already, this idea of the back office function that just kept everything running. And I definitely believe the role of a CTO or CIO has evolved to it's a strategy role. Now, it's also a role that still has the operational accountability.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So when you think about that, it's broad. It's a very broad mandate. So you've got to be good at a lot of different things. Yeah. But I would say with the broad mandate, core skills are being able to spot and develop talent, being able to construct teams, because you can't be good at all of the functions. So you need to be able to develop a team that can be great at all of the functions. So I think that's core for executives. And that's fair of any executive, not just technology leaders, but I think the breadth of what technology leads requires it to be different. Yeah. I would say also key where we sort of are today is CIOs and CTOs, we have to be fluent in the business that we're supporting or driving. So, a lot of companies will say, well, we're a technology company. It's like saying we're a people company. Every company is a technology company. How do you make money? That's what you need to know. And you need to know how your function, being the technology function, can enable that. And you need to speak that language to your peers, to the CEO. So it's a bit of a translator role. So I think those keys are like strong communication skills, strong ability to dissect and translate for people and make it real in a way that your audience most often your peers and the CEO can understand. You know, I quote Kim Scott here. So she wrote Radical Candor, an amazing book if anybody's interested. But she talks about in the book, effective communication is measured at the listener's ear, not at the speaker's mouth. So keeping that in mind, you know, if you say, well, I'm a good communicator, would your audiences say that? So when you think about a technologist that tends to speak from a technology lens, if you're talking to your CFO, she or he will be, you know, that's not what they want to talk about. So that changing that narrative, I think, is key.
Yeah.
Now, to where the role is going, I think it's so fascinating. And most recently, I was chatting with one of our board members on this topic. And, you know, it's going a variety of different ways. So some CIOs are moving into CEO roles. If you think about the CIO role, we're one of the few executives that has a window into all parts of the organization.
Yeah, exactly.
Us in HR.
Yep.
And the CFO generally. So we're very integrated. So I would say that is an exceptional skill at the CEO level. We're also seeing, I'm observing a pattern of it's staying as a CIO or CTO role or blending as in my role. And it's really just more of a strategist role. So the operations in that isn't going away, but it's more focused on strategy. Then the other area I would say that's been interesting is the rise of the chief digital officer or chief transformation officer roles in larger organizations, as well as the chief data officer role.
Yeah.
So depending on the type of organization, I think those are all fair game. If you think about what a CIO brings to the table, they're generally very transferable skills.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting to think about all of those as just options. So really, as an individual, what do you want to do?
Yeah. In other words, like a credible technology executive has really options are vast, including a very unique opportunity to actually get the top job with the right attributes, skills, because of the fact that, as you said, technologists today need to understand how everything comes together.
It's
and at a very tactical level. So they're really great technology leaders who understand that, but also have those additional skills you mentioned, skills that we used to call soft skills.
Yeah.
We are now appreciating those might be the hardest of skills.
Exactly.
Right? That the opportunity is significant and including top job of the organizations. We see that, we actually see that happen. We're seeing that happening in the across industries. I really like what you said. You need to be a strategist, but you also need to be an operator. And this is, I think, an interesting dichotomy that is sometimes challenging to navigate. But then there is strategies, but there is also a catalyst. You need to be seen as someone who is driving change across the organization, and then also technologists to a degree. So there are multiple hats that you need to wear, right? And balance all of that to be in the right role at the right moment. And that is actually very interesting. Okay?
It is. And it's what keeps the role fascinating and a bit, you know, it's not for the faint of heart, right? There are folks that prefer to be in one space or the other. But what an amazing development opportunity to be able to learn how to do both. And again, it's about building a team that can support you and that knows what they're doing. You don't have to be the expert in all things, but you do have to be able to know how to spot the experts. Right?
Exactly.
That's the key.
Yeah. Janine, this is fantastic. Thank you for sharing your thoughts about this. Really, really excellent. I wanted to ask you, you've had private sector experience, now public sector experience, obviously senior technology executive in Canada. Your reflections on us as a community. What is the role that we could and should play in helping our country progress and prosper as a community of technologists and technology leaders?
Yeah. I think things like this getting our stories out. I think, supporting the community more broadly is key, because I think, we have this saying here at OLG, EIT, Enterprise Information Technology, is the key to future readiness.
Yeah.
And future readiness isn't one point in time. It's always changing. Right? So it's like this thing that you're chasing that you'll never actually catch, but you have to chase it. And I think that's where technology plays in Canada. So if you think about, I'll draw from experience in my past life, climate change. There's some fascinating work being done in that space by technologists to say, how do we have technology that goes up into the clouds and measures all of these things and brings it all back down? And how do we do that real time? And I think that's fascinating to me. So how do we push the bounds and learn, experiment, and develop ourselves to be those strategists and really pushing the bounds? I think, technology is the key to future readiness, period. Not to overlook, the traditional people, process, and technology. I'm not saying that the others aren't, but I think we owe it to the country to be pushing ourselves forward and pushing our agendas and experimenting, and dare I even use the word innovation. Like it's a bit of an overused term, but I do think this idea of pushing the boundaries is something near and dear to my heart. But I do think, when I think about my experience in the private sector and the public sector, where it can come together, is like, how do we do that in a safe way that, doesn't scare the public sector too much, and really still protects our citizens across the country as well. So it's a beautiful conundrum, I would say.
And what I heard you mention is the importance of actually staying connected, being connected with your colleagues, with your peers. I think this is where we will win or lose as a country on the global scale.
Yes.
Is to what degree are we able to leverage information and technology for the benefit of us and our society? And it is people like you who are actually making this real. So that interconnectedness, I appreciate, is really important. What I'm observing is that most successful tech executives almost think of themselves at the center, and building an advisory council around them of peers, colleagues, people that they can rely upon, right?
Yeah.
Because the change is so fast, and so many things are hitting you. You almost need to have a sounding board and advisors around that you can trust. And
It's
I
a
think
team sport, right?
it
It's a
is,
team
exactly.
sport. And that's
Yes.
how we have to think about it, is it's a team sport. So any one player in a team sport can't win the game alone, right?
That's
So I see it
exactly
very
right.
much as a team sport.
That's wonderful, wonderful. Janine, I had a couple of questions come through the QA, so thank you very much, audience, for submitting them. It was a question on automate. We couldn't escape the word AI. I was assuming that we will at some point mention it, but here's a question: with all the automation opportunities, AI coming, how do you determine what solutions to invest in, given all the incredible amount of options? Like,
So this is a good question. And there are a lot of options, right? And I think this is one area that we're working through right now on an initiative. We have a robust public sector procurement practice that helps us assess vendors and make sure we get partners that, can do what they say they do, bluntly speaking. Where I see the opportunity that we have to figure out is how do we leverage experimentation, though?
yes.
Because especially if you think about, maybe back to your earlier question, just connecting the two, wanting to stimulate innovation and economic development in our country, in our province, how do we partner with some of the smaller shops to experiment and see where we could go? So when you make big strategic investments, of course, you need to do your due diligence. But how do we think smaller at the same time? So I see it as this, you're always working at two speeds, right? The big, huge investments require, I would say, huge due diligence. But how do you get smaller and tactical and test and learn That is something that we continue to work at and try to figure out how do we do that in a very controlled manner within the bounds of our public sector processes.
Processes and rule. Yeah. So like a version of thinking fast and slow at the same time, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, excellent. So Janine, the final question I wanted to ask you is, we oftentimes have members in the audience who are students, who are people considering their career. What would be your advice to students? And also, what would be your advice now to your younger self?
So my advice to my younger self would be, I would tell myself it'll be okay. Particularly very, very early days, there was a lot, again, I mentioned the intertwining with, being a young single mom. I will tell myself that it'll be okay. You should bet on you. I don't think I realized that's what I was doing at the time. And I think I wish I had realized that I'm in control and I can do this. So I would say I would tell myself it'll be okay. And I think, again, with the benefit of hindsight, say yes to things. Like I didn't realize that's what I was doing, but that is what I was doing. So I would say to others, like, just say yes. The things, I'll quote Janine Leahey, who was the IBM CEO and chair for a number of years, and a bit of a controversial figure, but definitely a woman that, led the way for technologists. She said, when I listened to her speak, she said, growth and comfort never coexist.
Mm-hmm.
That has been so true for me. And I heard that only a handful of years ago. But when I look back on my career, that idea, if you're comfortable, you're probably not growing.
That's a fantastic advice, actually. And I'm thinking about my life, and I agree, actually.
Yeah.
I agree. Janine,
and I
this
do
was
think
fantastic.
if you stop growing, that's not in our world with everything going on. If you're not growing, things are changing so fast. I think you're putting yourself in a potentially difficult situation. So
You're
that
right.
idea of just be comfortable being uncomfortable.
We're like an airplane, right? If you don't fly, you stall. So if you don't grow, you stall.
Exactly.
But this is the choice we all made by choosing to be in the career that we are in this technology career, right? Janine, this was fantastic. So, thank you so much. This was wonderful. We are now at time, a couple of minutes over the time that we planned. So, but thank you so much for sharing your story and sharing your wisdom. And for the audience members, as you know, this session has been recorded. We will soon post it on our YouTube channel, Tectonic Conversations. If you'd like to view it again or share it with your colleagues. And please consider joining us tomorrow. Tomorrow, we're going to have a very, very interesting panel conversation. It will include an ADM from Government of Ontario, a CFO from a financial institution, and also members of Deloitte's Black Action Council. They're going to talk about inclusive AI and the importance of creating AI that actually helps us with inclusiveness of all the participants. So that's tomorrow, same time, same channel. So please join us. And with that, I'd like to thank you all very much. And thank you, Janine, especially, and wish you a happy Wednesday.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.